Okay, councillors, we are ready to resume. Just mindful of and not wanting to stifle debate, we are going to struggle to get through this agenda tonight. So that's just my reminder. Otherwise, if we don't get through it tonight, we do then have to postpone it to another day. And I don't think we particularly want to come back and debate things again. So I'm just mindful. So can I call on Councillor Tim Young to move the motion 8(2)?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I move that the motion on the individual electoral registration, the details of which are at page 3 of the supplementary information, be approved and adopted. Now, hopefully this can be a short and sweet debate, Madam Mayor, because I can't see why anyone in their right mind would want to oppose this, because it is supporting democracy. It is supporting democracy and widening democracy as far as we possibly can, and that should surely be supported by any democratic councillor in this chamber tonight. And I just want to highlight one part of the motion, because the Electoral Commission, not known as a radical left-wing splinter group, I have to say, but an impartial arbiter, and this is what they've said. There is a risk that a considerable number of eligible voters could be removed from the registers before the significant set of polls scheduled for May 2016 if the transition to IER is brought forward. I think we should listen to the Electoral Commission. I think the government should listen to the Electoral Commission. It's important that we get this right. It's important that we get as many people who are eligible to go on the electoral registers in the Borough of Colchester should do so. And the government seems to be making it awfully difficult for that to happen, and that's got to be wrong. And I think we should all make representations to them about that, because there was a time when it was actually against the law not to register to vote, and I think that was right, because it's an important right. It's a hard-fought and hard-gained right, the right to vote, and it should be supported, and you can support that by supporting the amendment tonight. Now, the government's decision to bring the transitional arrangements before IEI is fully implemented forward by 12 months, I'm not sure what that's all about. I think that could be a sinister political manoeuvre. You'd like to think it isn't, but what's any other reason for doing it? The timetable was set out, everybody was in agreement with it, because the concept of individual electoral registration is probably one that you wouldn't want to argue with. It gives responsibility to people to register to vote. So who is mainly affected by this change of policy and by this move to individual electoral registration? It is mainly people, we've already spoken about, in social, private rented sector in particular. It is people in homes of multiple occupation. It is students, and it is people who are transient. And what some people have suggested is that the reason the government don't really mind if they're not on the electoral register is because they tend not to vote Conservative. And if that is the thinking, then that is absolutely shameful and absolutely wrong, and it is what the leader of the Labour Party called gerrymandering at our party conference in September. And unless you can come up with arguments as to why they're doing it, then you have to believe that that is the case. Here, I'd like to really pay tribute to Sarah Cheek, our electoral services manager, and her team, because they are pulling out all the stops to get as many people registered to vote as they can in Colchester. And it means writing out and visiting and going and see people, but you know, you've got to encourage them to vote, and you've got to carry on encouraging them to vote, because that is their right. And even if they then don't use that right, it's still an important right to have and to get them on the register. You can't just do away with thousands of people off the electoral register. It's wrong, and we should be telling the government, and our MPs should be telling the government, that it is wrong. We should be supporting the right to vote. I hope you will get behind this. I hope you will get behind the Electoral Commission and what they're saying. And to Councillor Locker, I would say, if this the right to vote in Colchester isn't something that affects Colchester Borough Council when we've got all-out council elections next year, where people on the electoral register, those people will be the ones who can vote whether to change the political makeup of this chamber or not, is surely something that this council has to have a view on. I notice, but if you apply the same thinking to these two motions, then presumably you apply it to motion L as well, which is Councillor Willett's motion, which is about a national policy that affects local government. Well, so is this. And it's important that the local representatives of the people of Colchester should have their say on the previous issue and on this issue. I think the right to vote is one of the most important rights we have in a democracy, and we should defend it to the hilt. And I fear that the legislation around individual electoral registration is making that harder to achieve. So please, please, back this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Willett.
Madam Mayor, we believe that it is one of the most important democratic rights, if not the most important, that everyone should have the opportunity to vote at elections. We do not believe that they should have to vote, but we believe that everyone should have the right to vote and be able to do so if they wish. The precursor to that is, of course, appearing on the electoral register so that one has a legal entitlement to vote. And that is the question we're looking at the moment. I certainly believe that the fairest way of garnering in the names is the individual electoral registration system, which the government is introducing. It should be the responsibility of everyone to say, here I am, put me on the register, because voting is so important. Therefore, I think the transition is vitally important that we move as quickly as possible to that particular system. But nevertheless, we do have to recognise the thrust of some of Councillor Young's remarks, that this is a process which perhaps is not taking place as quickly as we might have hoped, and that there is little prospect that the entire country, everyone who has a potential to want to vote, will be there in time. And before his tirade and turning it into a political issue, just reading the words which he put forward, I was persuaded by that, and I believe many of my colleagues were persuaded by the motion that he had written. And I think it's unfortunate that, having put a convincing argument to this council, he goes and ruins it all by turning it into a political tirade. But Madam Chairman, I think we should not judge it on the foibles of Councillor Young's debating skills. We should decide this matter on the matter of the motion. And I feel inclined to support Councillor Young's motion, because I believe he has identified a point and that we should be adjusting the system if it means that the transition period goes on a little longer and more people who might have been excluded from the voting process are able to vote. So I will be voting for Councillor Young's motion, despite the fact that he's done his darnest to make me not vote for it.
Councillor Jowers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm inclined to agree about going to the vote in a moment or two. Mainly because I just love it when the trumpets blare with Tim. I really do. You know that his heart's really in it, head, soul, feet, and other parts of his anatomy at the same time. He's right, though. He is right, and it was unfortunate. This is some vile plot cooked up by Azael, the devil, who's going to sort of make sure that Labour voters, minimal though they are actually going to be banned from voting. The real problem... No, there aren't many in Mersey, that's true. They're wise beyond their age, too. But the real problem, of course, is not, those who are stopped and those who aren't. It's those who possibly would come here tonight. The disillusioned. The people who think, what on earth are we doing for them? And actually, much more pragmatically in some ways, is I'm going to get on a register that's going to be sold to every Tom, Dick and Harry in the country, and I'm going to get 8 million unsolicited phone calls. You know, you all of you talk to people, in the, you know, when you're going around door knocking or whatever. And it actually is a sense of disillusionment about allowing personalities to be used. The motion in itself is great. Everyone should have every encouragement to vote. But you can't force a horse to water. By all means, allow this to be put forward. Well, the drinking, yeah, you can't force it to the water if you don't want to drink, that's true. Yeah, I've got a lot of sympathy with Australia. You know, in some ways, my draconian view would say, fine the blighters 10 quid if they don't, because at the back of this is what went before. You know, the Pankhurst has just come out with the women's vote, but actually that right to vote should not necessarily be this sort of debate. It's the essence of us as a democracy. So anything we can do to encourage and enthuse, great. If it needs a bit more time to get it right, I've got no problem with supporting this at all. But I think sometimes, look at us. How do we behave? Are we giving the right message to people saying, well, I'd look at this and I'd think, I'm not going to vote for anyone. Just a caution, really. So I'll support it.
Councillor Locker, you want to go to the vote? All right, so we ask Councillor Young to sum up and go to the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, that's a very nice debate. Thank you very much. Obviously, such a well-worded motion that you found its support. I'm glad. I hope you also pay tribute to Sarah Cheek and her team. I think they're doing a really wonderful job. I just wanted to mention the university, as I've mentioned it in, because that will encourage young people to vote. And the university used to register all the first-year students automatically. Now that doesn't happen. I know Sarah and the team have been to the university, but it's not the same as automatically registering them. And I think that we've got to look at that. And also, actually, I support votes at 16, because especially in the EU referendum, I think that their futures are going to be affected whichever way it goes. So I think we've got a lot of work to do with young people. And whatever you think of the new leader of the Labour Party, whatever I think of the new leader of the Labour Party, he is attracting young people back to politics, and that can only be a good thing. So thank you for your support from the opposition, and I look forward to a unanimous endorsement of this motion.
I now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour?
That's carried, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Right. Item 8.3, Wivenhoe Cycle Trail. I invite Councillor Corey, please, to move an amendment to his motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to also amend the point that it's Wivenhoe Cycle Path, not a trail. That may get confused with the local Wivenhoe Trail that we have as well. I am proposing altering the wording of the motion on the Wivenhoe Cycle Path motion so that the wording is now circulated to members. And I move that that motion that has been circulated be approved and adopted. The main reason I had to amend it was because of the Wivenhoe Trail, which has been recently updated, and I had to remove that to be precise, so I wasn't over-egging the pudding. We have called for local motions this evening, and you can't get more local than this. This really does affect my local residents and all the people of Wivenhoe, and I feel it's my duty as a borough councillor to bring this to you this evening. We need to ensure we hold the county council to account on this one, and we do get the infrastructure that we have been promised for years. I recently have had a number of phone calls on this, but it's not a recent thing. We've battled on this for years, and I know that Councillor Julie Young as well and I have battled on this for quite a few years, and Councillor Liddy too, and we know that this has been an issue that Wivenhoe people feel in the dark about, so I want to shed some light on it this evening. The motion is quite clear. It sets out the points here, and it sets out where I'm calling upon the Cabinet Member for Highways to set a final start and delivery date for this cycle path to be completed, and also to improve communication. Now, that is one of the key points I want to raise this evening. Unfortunately, due to failures with the planning of the policy and unfortunately, legal agreements that have not been sought. The County Council had to not go ahead with the plan as it was to be last month. They did not let residents know about this, and even on the website it still said that Wivenhoe, the main road into Wivenhoe, Colchester Road, would be closed. Residents have been left in the dark, and it's not good enough. This is a major piece of infrastructure for Wivenhoe residents and for the wider community. I was talking to Councillor Harrington just the other evening about how he enjoys to cycle into Wivenhoe, and I want him to be safe going in and out of Wivenhoe too. I care about everybody in this chamber. I don't want to go into the local history of it any more than that, but there's just a few key points that have been that need to be made. They've not let residents know about the changes, and they've not let councillors know at a local level either. I want to know when this path is going to be built, and so do my residents. So therefore, I've put in there that communication and consultation needs to be improved between the County Council and the Borough Council representatives and the County Council representative on this issue. And I'm afraid there are too many examples around our whole borough where the communication is not good enough between the County Council and the borough. Now, I'm not flogging the County Council for this. I want the opposition, the Conservatives here also running the County Council, I hope they too feel that there needs to be better communication and consultation in these highways issues. I remember quite a few months ago calling up Councillor Jowers in despair, having rung the County Council and needing some advice and support about how to get them to listen properly, and he did give me that support. So I know the other side of the chamber do also feel that the county sometimes needs to listen more. So please, can you support this motion? It is a local motion. We need to get local action on this to get a good piece of infrastructure to ensure that people are safely and encouraged safely to cycle in and out of Wivenhoe. It will also improve the pavement provision as well when this gets done. Please support this motion so we can get it done in Wivenhoe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bentley.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much indeed. Well, this motion saddens me on many levels. Saddens initially because, of course, clearly there's an incident here that needs sorting out. It's not my part of the world, but it's not far away from my county division of Roe Edge, just across the water. So I know how important this is, and I do know that cycling is extremely important to this county, indeed this borough as well. It saddens me also because I think it's opportunistic. I really feel that, and I'll explain why I think it's opportunistic. Firstly, despite the assurances from Councillor Corey this is not county council bashing, it is. And I never hear this authority complain when we come up with multi-million-pound deals for you in this borough. And I've warned you about this in the past. No, warned's the wrong word. I've mentioned it in this chamber as well. It's easy to, if I want to sit here and list all the things that annoy me about the administration at County Hall, we'd be here all night. So I don't do that because that doesn't take us any further forward. And what also saddens me about this as well is I've recently been copied into a number of email into a chain. I'm glad it was because I wasn't particularly aware of this, not being my area, and I've taken a great interest in it as well. And what I've seen is Councillor Julie Young and Councillor Scott, who've been to see Rodney Bass. He's no longer in this portfolio. There's a new chap called Eddie Johnson, so I'm sure we can arrange for you to see him and talk to him if you haven't done so already. And I know you have campaigned. I know you have spoken to certainly Councillor Bass at his surgery, and I know you've been down to County Hall to do that, and I know Councillor Julie Young has obtained the facilities to make that happen. Quite rightly so. I think it's also important that we try and get now Councillor Johnson up here as well to see the issue and try and get it sorted out. What I haven't seen and what I don't know, and that is what Councillor Corey has done. I see this motion, so I know that's all happening, but what is the opportunistic side of this that really worries me? And therefore, I think it's important we get it resolved as quickly as possible. Bring in motion and say, yes, of course it's local, and of course it's very, very important. But is this the right vehicle to get it done? Debate, lobbying, campaigning, talking and understanding are the way we get a lot of things resolved in this borough, as many members opposite will know. When we've had issues we've needed to get done between us, we've done that. And therefore, I'm very willing to help, if you think I can, given the position I hold at County Hall, I'm very willing to help you try and get this resolved. It's not as simple as this motion makes out. As I understand it, it is hugely complicated on legal matters, hugely complicated. It's not a simple matter of let's do it by the end of next week. If it were, then the County Council, I'm sure, would have done that. So let's get round the table. I will try and bring Councillor Johnson up here to meet with you, discuss it, get his ideas about it, see what we can do to unlock it, where the real problem is. Does the real problem actually lie with the County Council? I don't know the answer to that question. Let's find out. If it is really the County Council, then I will do all I can along with my other county councillors to unblock that for you. But please, opportunistic motions, I think, are puerile and silly.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, this has been outstanding for a very long time, and I share the frustrations of residents in Wivenhoe about the long-awaited development of this new cycleway. There has been problems with information as well. I don't say that there hasn't been. I think when the road closure notice was sent out, that wasn't sent out very timely. So I think it came as a bit of a surprise to all that that was being declared that the next week the road would be closed. And of course that creates a great difficulty for people coming in and out of Wivenhoe. And I think at the time, Councillor Scott sent an email to Councillor Bass, and as Councillor Bentley has indicated, I made arrangements following the invitation for Councillor Bass to come up and talk about the issue. Councillor Scott did come up to County Hall, and we met last Tuesday week to talk this through. And the things that we discussed was about the road closure from Boundary Road to Vine Drive. We thought that was excessive. Could they try and minimise that and close the road from Elmstead Road to Boundary Road? And they said that they would look at that. We also asked for better and earlier notification, and to the same to the bus companies, and Councillor Bass committed to do that. And since that meeting, I've taken the opportunity to look at the issues that Councillor Bass identified as obstacles to progress. And what he said to us, that it was about legal issues between the landowner and the County Council. So I talked to the landowner this week, and there is no problem whatsoever from his perspective of progressing this scheme. So there's no hold up from his perspective at all. And I also talked to the County Council about speeding up the legal process. And I spoke to the director of the legal department, Mr. Philip Thompson. I've asked for him to keep me in the loop and notify me of any problems that arise. But actually, although I will be voting for this motion, it's very difficult to set a final start date and an end date, because how long is a piece of string actually? So those issues have to be worked through. People in this chamber will remember there was the bat survey that had to be done, and that created a hold up. There was a protection order put on the hedge by this authority that was challenged by the County Council and resolved. And there are issues that have to be worked through. Part of the recent consultation, I think Peter Kay, the transport representative in Wivenhoe, went back to the County Council and identified a conflict between cycle users and the bus stops. So there was a tweak that needed to be done in terms of the plans. So they have been legitimate hurdles that have actually arisen that have delayed the start of work. We're at the stage of legal documents to be drawn up, as at Monday of this week, it might have been Tuesday. New plans have been drawn up, they've been emailed out, and the landowner is waiting for the paper copy of those plans. So things are moving, absolutely they are moving, and I've done as much as I can as the county member for the area to make sure that is the case, and will continue to do so. So I will be voting for the motion, but I do think it's optimistic to set a final start date and finish date when there's these legal issues that need to be worked through. Both sides are saying they will not frustrate or delay the process. I have to believe that that's the truth, and I hope that that is the truth, and they've promised to keep me up to date with progress. I hope that clarifies the issue, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Davis next.
Thank you very much. I must admit, I do have a great deal of sympathy for the motion, were it not for the slightly disingenuous part of it, I'm afraid. And I hate to say that to Councillor Corey. I just think you're looking at improving communication and consultation, and bearing in mind the record that the current administration has on communicating and consulting, I would suggest that you're probably not best placed to actually suggest that somebody else gets that right. You've got a fairly sorry history on the subject of communicating and consulting. And in fact, I think this has been borne out now because obviously there's other members for Wivenhoe who are perfectly well aware what is happening, and had you maybe communicated and consulted with them, then we wouldn't have needed to do this, because I think that the solution offered by Councillor Bentley and the other councillors for Wivenhoe is a very sound one and will be far more effective than this actual motion here. Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to pick up Councillor Bentley on one of his comments, which I'm actually loath to do because I spent most of the comfort break having a good chat to Councillor Bentley trying to improve communications in relation to waste, and I think we're doing quite well, and we're certainly improving in that way. Until now, of course. But you did mention, and it caught my attention, that apparently we don't complain when you bring big money projects to Colchester. Well, we do complain in Mile End when you bring a cycle path that nobody's asked for, nobody wants, and is badly designed and is dangerous for residents and for cyclists. So just to clarify, we do complain when they're bad ideas. Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you very much for your offer of help, and I'm sure that Councillor Corey and I and Councillor Manning and Councillor Lee will all be very pleased to have your help, as we have Julie's help, in progressing this. I would like to commend the motion with flaws that you've pointed out, because actually it comes from a passionate desire to get what Wivenhoe has wanted for a long time, and the quicker the better, for safety and for recreation. Thank you very much.
Councillor Willits.
Madam Mayor, from what we've heard this evening about the consultation that has been led by Councillor Julie Young, the considerable list of consultations and activities that have been going on to solve what is a difficult problem, I'm sure my colleagues on this side of the chamber would be mindful to support this motion if the mover was prepared to take out the second bullet point, knocking the county council on the basis of consultation and communication, which clearly is not so. We've heard that our members from this council have been to County Hall, they've had access to the people taking the decisions, they've understood that there are difficult legal decisions, and even if they're legal decisions, it's fair to ask, can we have a start date and a finish date? I mean, it may not be a particularly accurate one, but I think it's a very fair question to ask. And therefore, if we can have the second bullet point withdrawn, I'm sure this side of the chamber would be mindful to give its support to the excellent work which our borough councils have been doing in consultation with the county council to solve this problem.
Thank you very much. Councillor Corey, to sum up, please.
Thank you. Unfortunately, thank you for your offer there, but it says to improve communication. It doesn't knock the council, it says improve, because having that the road is shut on the website when it is not good enough. And having a number of phone calls from residents who are worried and completely in the dark is not good enough. It does need to improve. I want to be at the other end of the phone when the county council call. I want to have responses to my emails to Councillor Bass. So can I respond to the opportunistic comment? The opportunistic comment, I wish it was more opportunistic, because usually when you're opportunistic, you get things achieved very quickly. I would want to use this mechanism because that's the only mechanism I feel I have left. I have offered Councillor Bass on a number of occasions to come and do a site visit with me. It is in my ward, it is round the corner from where I live, and I want to show him and tell him about the residents. I know, not anymore. But for the last few years, I have been dealing with Councillor Bass, I'm afraid.
Can you allow him, please, to carry on? We know it's not Councillor Bass. I have been dealing
with Councillor Bass for a number of years on this project, and I have invited him over the last however many months into years to come and do a site visit so we can discuss it. So this is the last opportunity I have to put into play the residents' thoughts and worries and concerns and wants for this cycle path. I thank Councillor Scott for what she said. She does speak for the people of Wivenhoe, and I thank Councillor Young for the further updates. But I have not been having enough communication given back to me by Councillor Bass, and that's where I had got to this point of frustration. I really would like to use the offer from Councillor Bentley to get the wheels in motion better and to meet the new portfolio holder and to either meet them on site or at County Hall at their best convenience. I hope that this motion will be carried and we will be able to improve communication and we will be able to get a start date for this project very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now put the motion to Council. All those in favour? Those against? The rest abstentions? The motion's carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 8.4, the motion on Essex Police. Councillor Goss.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the motion on Essex Police, the details of which are at page 4 of the supplementary agenda, be approved and adopted. I think the police are the backbone of our support when we end up dealing with multiple different issues as councillors. I would be very surprised if even some of our newest councillors haven't been involved with referring items to the police or gaining information from the police about issues in their neighbourhood. So I'm obviously very concerned about the £63 million worth of budget reductions, I won't use the word cuts, to Essex Police. I think that it will have an impact on the services we consume in our local communities. Essex is a growing place. I think that crimes such as antisocial behaviour, pavement parking, blocked driveways, neighbour disputes, graffiti and speeding and various other lower crime issues will simply get ignored. And the police are actually saying that when you report it. They log it and nothing happens. PCSOs for years have been the backbone of our community policing. We are going to axe 190 PCSOs in Essex, leaving us with 60 to cover the whole county. I've worked closely in Mile End with our PCSOs over the years. They change, but they're always there. And they are really the people that you see on the street dealing with some of the lower level crimes and liaising with the community. And actually, lots of the cases that have been solved in my local community have come from intelligence passed to PCSOs because they know their local community and they can therefore gather that information, which also helps detecting rates. Potentially this will affect town centre policing, which we already know is squeezed at the weekends because of our booming nighttime economy. There's also concern that residents will stop reporting crime because it is all about statistics. This is what the police tell us all the time, to tell residents, if you see a crime, however low level it is, report it, because if you don't, we won't record it. Police are also residents living in our neighbourhoods, and I think we forget that sometimes. And there's certainly plenty of police officers in my own neighbourhood that I've spoken to about these cuts, or I said I wouldn't use the word cuts, these budget reductions, and they have obviously raised concerns. So let's look at some of the facts in the press, just to substantiate some of the comments I've made. So I was interviewed on radio about Essex Police taking 114 days to investigate crime, which actually is the highest in the UK, and that's 46 days more than, say, Cleveland in the northeast. There are concerns raised in the press on the 27th of January in the Gazette that Colchester has 16.57 incidents per 1,000 people compared to the Essex average of 13.39. Colchester is compared to other similar areas in the UK such as Canterbury, Newcastle under Lyme and Maidstone, but these areas have 12.64 crimes per 1,000 people. So obviously we do appear to have an average crime level that is higher than some of the national and more local averages. If we axe more police officers, I'm sure that can only get worse. There's also several reports about stress in the police force, which really does concern me. I'm certainly mindful of stress in all workplaces, but some figures for you. In 2014, Nick Alston actually said that the police officer duty days lost to anxiety, depression or stress was worryingly high. And this was only when Essex Police had a cost saving to make of £42 million. Wind it forwards a year, it's now gone up by £19 million. So that can only get worse. According to the East Anglian Daily Times on the 4th of March this year, in 2013-14 financial year, there was 11,238 days lost in Essex Police down to stress-related illness. In a Freedom of Information request, only up until the end of January this year, so we've still got a quarter to run until all the figures coming from the financial year, 10,007 days were lost. So it looks like this year's stress-related illness will probably be the highest ever in Essex Police. Open incidents, 2,300 open incidents at the start of the summer. It has now come down to 700. But one of the concerns raised in the independent HMIC 2014 report is that officer contact and updating of victims in crime needs to improve because it's not done in a timely fashion. That was found as requires improvement. Obviously, with less officers, that is going to be a struggle. So overall, I am concerned about the health and well-being of our police. I'm concerned about our communities. I'm concerned about losing PCSOs because they really do a fantastic job. And having spoken to a local police officer in Mile End only this week on a matter, I happened to then speak to him about the budget reductions. And he said, at first, when PCSOs came in, to be perfectly honest, they weren't necessarily liked and respected by all officers. But over the years, they have been because they do vital work to release officers to do other key work. And what he was saying was, say you had a major incident, which could be a major traffic accident or a murder, the PCSOs are key to that because they actually secure the area, they keep people away, they speak to local people, which means that if we axe all of those PCSOs, that role is going to have to fall on somebody else. If we're also reducing police officers, where is all this resource going to come from? So that is my concern. So overall, this isn't a political motion. This is a motion about our local communities. I haven't attacked the government in any way. I haven't attacked anybody for cuts. We are where we are. The cake is what it is, but I am extremely concerned for Colchester and its residents.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I needn't have brought this sort of 10-kilo document with me, which is the Peel report, HMIC. For all these protestations, I do actually feel that the gist of this motion is actually against the police. It's saying they're not doing their job properly. Now, you could argue, actually, if they are taking the longest time, then maybe they're not. Councillor Young and I are on the Police and Crime panel. It's not our job to support the police or actually even support the Police and Crime Commissioner. It's for us to scrutinise and review. I was interested, though, that Councillor Goss, in his wonderfully devious way, has picked on Cleveland. 230 square miles of territory and 63 pence per person per day. Essex, 1,417 square miles and 43 pence per person per day. So the background to this is that we are overall in the top quartile. Actually, we're nearly at the top in terms of overall efficiency. We are now the lowest funded force in the country. And what can we do about it? What can the police force do about it? Well, actually, not a lot, because they are restricted in the same way as we are, in that there is a cap on the levy that can be raised, 2%. It would not surprise me to see the present Commissioner go out to a referendum, because the Essex Force is facing £63 million of cuts. That's what it is, that's where it is. Anyone who can persuade the Home Office or the government to raise that funding so it comes to a reasonable level, fine. We've tried to do it on the Police and Crime panel by voting through the maximum precept rise. And Tim and I are well aware there was some dissent, oddly enough, from my side more than anyone else, which I was extremely surprised about. It's not enough. We cannot keep up with it. If you're going to do that 63 million, what you fail to say, Councillor Goss, is where would you make the savings? And what you don't bring out is where Essex Police have actually become national leaders in some rather sad issues. Domestic violence, they're probably the best that we've got. Child sexual abuse. There's also another issue which we found, I shouldn't mention, but say probably the Met, of U-Tree. Many issues of act in haste and repent at leisure. One could argue that if you're getting a good case, and a couple of members on the other side would understand, that the CPS will only take a well-researched, well-briefed, well-thought-out case. Sometimes they take some idiotic ones very rapidly. But I would rather see the job being done well and the conviction rate, which is good, rather than us rushing in and doing some rather odd and bizarre things. Yes, Essex Police has got problems. Part of their solution to this is going to be, I suspect, they will sell their headquarters. And quite a bit of it is selling some ancient buildings, which are costing us somewhere in the region of £32 million a year in maintenance. They're also bringing in Athena, which is the new telecom system, IT system, which, you know, hopefully it won't act like other IT systems in the National Health Service or elsewhere, and it will help improve their efficiency. They have got to do more for less. And both the Commissioner and the Chief Constable have been saying to us that they don't see that visibility necessarily is efficiency, that they need to be much more focused. So from my point of view, I think it's a rather sly motion, Councillor Goss, in a sense. You say that it's not against the police, but I think Essex Police are brilliant, and they're under terrible pressure. We should be helping them as much as we can, and one of those would be to raise the levy cap. That really would. That would give us the money. If you don't come up with a way in which we can raise more money for the police, what else can they do? No point in griping about it. We are where we are. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I've got quite a few speakers on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Councillor Harris is next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm rising in support of the motion, you'll be pleased to know. Lots of reasons for that. I've since the late 90s and the early noughties, seen with my own eyes on my own estate in Queen Elizabeth Way, Monkwick Avenue, Birch Glen, the Willows, all the estates that I walk and travel every day. In that time, the boys and girls in blue, walking around, walking for England, knowing all the little darlings and knowing all the little darlings, if you know what I'm saying. They know everybody's car, they knew everybody's name, they knew who they were. If there was ever a better success story than PCSOs, as Councillor Goss illustrated, I don't know of it. It was a brilliant concept and it supported the neighbourhood police in the right way. And for those people to come into that trade, that profession, that calling as it were, with those motives, I saw firsthand, Madam Mayor, that how that worked. They were there because they damn well cared. So unlike Councillor Jowers, I think Councillor Goss's motion is just bringing to highlighting what the impact all those cuts are going to be on our communities. Wherever you are in Colchester, wherever you are in Essex, you're going to be hurting, you're going to have less police. Because, as it says, call-outs, when you call for them, they're not going to be there. I mean, that's a fact of life. That's been highlighted. They're not going to be there. You're going to highlight it on Ring 101 and nobody will come. And that's not their fault. They want to. I spoke to a police officer who remained nameless, a senior one, a couple of weeks ago, who said to me, Dave, I didn't come into this profession to do what I'm being told to do now. That's a fact. That officer, senior officer said that to me. I came into this profession to make a difference, and that's not going to make a difference, is it? I personally, with Councillor Pearson, have set up a neighbourhood watch locally. 38 people turned up to that meeting, Madam Mayor. 38 people. Because they see the writing on the wall, our residents see the writing on the wall. I've set up 4 or 5 neighbourhood watches in the last 18 months. Councillor Pearson will testify how passionate those people felt about their well-being, about taking ownership for some of their own neighbourhoods. But you can't do it without leadership. And leaders have always been the neighbourhood police team, and I salute them. And I certainly will be supporting this motion because it needs highlighting about where we're going, how we're going to manage with 20 PCSOs in Colchester to 6. Selling off our police stations, watering down all of that. That's something that raises concern for me, and I've really got to back this motion 100%.
Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sure that most of the opposition, if not all of the opposition, would support police officers, recognise the good job that they do, understand the pressures that they are currently under. I've worked for more than 12 years now with officers, frontline officers, middle-ranking officers, and even some senior officers on an almost weekly basis. And I've never, ever seen morale in the police service as low as it is today, across all ranks. And I think you need to take account of that. I was intrigued by Councillor Jower's volte-face about local taxes. We put local taxes up to pay for services. It's interesting to hear that from a Conservative member. Yeah, I'm pleased to hear that. And it seems to me that even the Police and Crime Commissioner may be about to give up the ghost and move on to pastures new because he doesn't believe in what's being done to the police service. I just want to draw members around the room and the wider public's attention to a couple of reports that are in the minutes from the Crime and Disorder panel that met in September, when the local commander explained to us that there's been a 56% increase in burglary over the past year. You can't suggest that that isn't anything to do with the reductions in the police budget. I also just want to draw your attention to another note in those minutes where she stated that local policing will look very different in 5 years' time compared to the present day. I think most of the people I represent, if not all of the people I represent, and most of the people we all represent in the borough of Colchester will think that that's a very sad day.
Councillor Barton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to support Councillor Goss's motion that we do express our concerns over the proposed cuts. I wanted to particularly dwell on PCSOs, and this is in support of the police, Councillor Jowers. I recently met up with the PCSOs in my ward, Shrub End, and actually some former PCSOs. And all I can echo is what's been said, that they are totally demoralised and really concerned that they cannot meet residents' expectations any longer. Now, these people are laid fears within communities, they engage with local people, and they have good inside knowledge. And this is invaluable if you want the smooth running of any community. So at a time when crime and antisocial behaviour is actually increasing in our ward, we're cutting our police resources. And I think Councillor Hazel will agree with me. I'm taking the Bode skate park as an example. There's been increasing sustained vandalism on that skate park for the last 8-9 months, to such an extent that we've had to close it. And if we'd had some patrols around, I feel we could have possibly monitored and managed that situation. So I was rather disturbed to hear that at a recent Garrison Neighbourhood Watch meeting that I went to, that regular patrols around the ward have been cut completely, as I think has been said. And as I say, these people reassured our communities, and they did make a real difference. So now residents are being encouraged to ring 101 if there's an incident. And only, and I repeat only, when several incidents have been reported, then targeted patrols will be actioned. Now, I find this quite alarming, and therefore I would urge this council to support Councillor Goss's motion. And I also just wanted to finish with, on Facebook, there is quite a swell of approval for actually putting up some of the council tax to actually make sure that we've got a good, efficient police force. And that seems to be gathering momentum each time I look on Facebook. So I would urge people in here to actually support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Cope, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I share the concerns about the loss of police officers because of the difficulties that will make with policing the nighttime economy. Licensing is the area of a council business that is most closely linked with police work, and it is probable that it will have a direct influence on the way licensing enforcement works. I've supported the licensing chair's pressure on officers to take account of this probable result of any reduction in the numbers of policemen available to police the nighttime economy. Regarding the general situation, I support Councillor Goss's motion. However, as the letter writer said recently, if it's a case of putting up the police precept part of the council tax, then that's maybe something we ought to face. Thank you.
Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also welcome what seems to be a bit of a change of heart about funding, because I think we've got to the stage where in a lot of our public services we've got to start saying we don't have the money to do the job, and I think that's what's being said here today in terms of policing. It's something that we talked about at County last Tuesday in terms of adult social care, and we've got to make that case to government that if we want to keep people safe, whether it's policing or adult social care, we have to have the money to do the job, and we're not getting the money to do the job. So I know the Conservative group at County Hall have made a big virtue of not putting council tax up, but we've seen the situation become detrimental to the residents of Essex over that time because we don't have the money to do the job, and that's been said very clearly in this chamber tonight. I also share Councillor Jowers' praise for the work that's been done on child sexual exploitation in Essex, and also the work about domestic abuse. I know there's been some high-profile cases, and I think both collectively, the County Council and the police have worked very hard on those particular issues. I also think that using buildings much more creatively will provide a way forward. I know certainly in Wivenhoe, the PCO has been using the fire station there. Whether we'll have a PCO to use that service, that station in the future, I do not know. And I just wanted to sort of dwell for a moment on my experience as a councillor. I got elected in 1998. The police were over there. We didn't have much to do with them. But actually, over the years, that relationship has built, and not just built with us as councillors. I know Councillor Tim Young has been out on sort of night patrol and stuff with the police, and I know others in the chamber as well have done that, just to see what the police do in the evening. And I've built up relationships with local officers. I know well our PCSOs, I know well our Sergeant Lou Middleton. Goodness knows whether he'll still be there in the future. I doubt it. Certainly from statistical analysis, the fear of crime has gone up in Essex, and I guess with this announcement it will go up even further. I share Councillor Chris Pearson's views of what we heard in scrutiny about policing looking very different in 5 years' time, and I think we need to look at how we can make communities in Colchester as safe as possible and how we can use our resources creatively to make them as safe as possible. And I just wanted to sort of mention, drug dealing actually. In the last week, I've had reports of drug dealing going on in Wivenhoe. I had reports of drug dealing last night going on in Greenstead, and I see it with my own eyes, and I report it to police on a regular basis. And I think perhaps if Councillor Giles is listening to this, maybe it's something that he would like to take back with him in terms of his work on the police and crime panel, because I do feel there's a little bit of an acceptance that's growing in from police that, well, yes, we know it's going on, but, you know, we haven't got the resources to do what we need to do to stamp that out. And I think young people are very vulnerable to this activity going on in our communities, so that worries me. But certainly it's been raised with me twice in the past week, as I say, and I'm seeing it with my own eyes, and I hope the police do something about that. So yes, I'll be supporting the motion, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have two more speakers. Councillor Tim Young's next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Goss, if I didn't think you were criticising the government's cuts to the police, I wouldn't have been supporting the motion, but I think this is. I don't think he's having a go at the police. I think he's having a go that the government have cut the police too hard and too fast. And I think that is the case. And I think if you read between the lines of the words of Councillor Jowers, I think he thinks that's the case as well. A 25% cut to police budgets is too much. And we're beginning to suffer the effects of that, the increases. As Councillor Pearson said, it's 17% rise in Colchester overall, with huge increases, particularly in vehicle crime, violent crime and burglaries. And I think if you do cut the police budgets by that much, that is going to be the cause and effect, I'm afraid. But I do think, and Councillor Giles knows this, Essex Police do a really good job. They are excellent in general, and we should give them our full support, because they do a very difficult job, and they do it in the most part very, very well indeed. We are at a tipping point, I think. I think we're at a tipping point where they're saying they won't deal with low-level ASB, antisocial behaviour anymore, and they expect the local authorities to pick that up. Local authorities who have had a 40% cut in our budget since 2010. But I do support the Chief Constable. I think he's a good man. I think he's tough, but I think he's got a good vision and he's got a realistic vision given the resources that he's got. And he and the Police and Crime Commissioner, who has also got a lot of time for, he's not of my political persuasion, but I think he's been moderate, and I think he's been honest, and I think in many ways it's a shame he's standing down. And I think he's right to look at the estate. The police estate is old, it's not fit for purpose, and it does need to be looked at. And if that upsets some people in my own group and in the administration, I'm sorry, that has to be looked at. I'm sure we'd all be looking at that, whoever was the Police and Crime Commissioner, because that's where you can make some big savings. I'm not sure about the new HQ, whether it should be a new build, but we'll see the costings on that, no doubt, at the Police and Crime Panel, which I have to say has been chaired very well indeed by Councillor Jowers. But to lose from 2010 450 PCSOs in Essex down to 60 is too big a cut. They had established relationships, as other members have said, with local councillors and with the community, and they were doing a really good job. And 6 for the Borough of Colchester, it just is totally inadequate. So if you put all that together, and it might not be the best worded motion ever, but I do think it sends the right message. And that message is, you've cut too far, you've cut too hard, and the effects are on local government, but on the communities we represent. I thought Councillor Jowers made a very balanced and valued contribution to this debate. I can understand why he's not going to support the motion, but I know in his heart of hearts he believes that more money needs to go into the police. More resources need to go into the police. And Nick Alston has said he's not going to have the referendum because he knows he'll lose, because that's been the experience of those police and crime commissioners who have had a referendum to try and put their precept up. So I guess we'll look at pushing it up as far as possible within the constraints, and surely those constraints should go. I agree with Councillor Jowers. If you believe in localism, let local people decide, and then they can vote on the Police and Crime Commissioner elections next year about who they want and how much they want to pay for the police. I don't think people in Colchester would mind paying another 75p a week to get more police officers back out on the streets. Where I do slightly disagree with Nick Alston and Councillor Jowers is, I think visible police presence is important on our streets, and we're going to lose that with the numbers of being reduced so drastically. So I'm going to support the motion, and I hope that the people who it's sent to will take notice of it, and we will take it up within the Police and Crime panel, where we have some really good debates, when the Police and Crime Commissioner comes forward with his budget, I think we will look very seriously, apart from probably our friend in Braintree, who nearly consistently votes against any increase in the precept, because that will at least ward off some of the worst effects of this. So I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you very much. And finally, we've got Councillor Lissimore.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say that I think Councillor Goss has been a little bit selective in some of the statistics and some of the quotes that he's been using. I'd just like to quote from the BBC News report dated the 6th of October, where Chief Constable Stephen Kavanagh is actually quoted, and he has said that the changes were absolutely essential to achieve the savings target by 2019-20. Many of the changes we announced today would need to be made even if money wasn't a problem, he said. We need to get smarter, more efficient, and put our limited resources where they can help people in need and not into outdated buildings or outmoded styles of policing. I think we've all experienced, as we've been speaking here tonight, how much respect we have for our local PCSOs and our local police. However, we've all given here examples of times where they've not attended where we've wanted them to. I particularly have been very frustrated when the police or the PCSOs have not been attending, as were called, the neighbourhood action panels. Perhaps this is an opportunity for them to get smarter. The times they are changing. And I do implore Councillor Goss to actually come forward with suggestions of what he would do, rather than just saying this is wrong. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Councillor Goss, please, to sum up?
I just wanted to say that was a good debate, and funnily enough, Councillor Lismore, I actually do have the same article open on my phone, which I will probably quote from in a minute, but in a different context. So I think there's been some real passion from some of the speakers tonight. They clearly believe in the issues that I've highlighted, the issues that will probably continue. I never said, Councillor Giles, that the police weren't doing a good job. I think that's actually quite disingenuous of you to try and put your usual spin on things. The police are trying to do a good job with the resources that they have that are diminishing. You can't keep running the same level of service if you keep cutting personnel. It's just obvious. The precept rise, yes, I agree. 2% is peanuts. It raises nothing. And I agree, if we could do away with that, that would be one of my suggestions, to put in place a reasonable rise, because you are right. If you look at the figures, Essex is one of the most grossly underfunded forces in the UK, and actually overall per head, a reasonable rise wouldn't cost households that much if the service would actually improve and people could see that and they'd feel safer. I do agree that any organisation will always do an estate's rationalisation and look at its property portfolio, whether it sells it, leases it. There's always different policies and structures to look at in any organisation, whether it's public or private. The police does have to have some estate, though. We can't sell all of it. So I think that has to be looked at carefully. You mentioned, Councillor Giles, the Athena computer system. I'm very aware of it. I work in IT. The feedback from users is not good. Officers are saying it's slowing them down, they're having to do more work, and therefore actually it's making them less efficient. So there are some serious issues. However, because we've spent £40 million on it, I'm afraid it's not an IT system that's going to be thrown away. Obviously, maybe they should have employed me to project manage it. Dave Harris, I think you and I share the same values and passion about our communities, and absolutely PCSOs have really done some great work over the years, so I fully support that. One other article that I didn't quote from, and this is what worries me, is Gazette on the 2nd of September states around a private security firm has launched paid-for patrols, although this is inside Frinton's gates, to fill the voids left by police cuts. These are the words in the police, not my these are the words in the press, not my words. It does worry me that we're going to see more and more of these companies offering those services to residents, which in effect means they're paying twice. They're paying council tax and obviously their taxes that fund the police. Potentially will we see a rise in private law enforcement? that's where I think things are going, worryingly. So you're going to be paying for it twice. I do agree that 6 PCSOs for the whole of Colchester, given that you'll have to cover sickness if the statistics on stress-related illness are correct. People will be on holiday or on training. Those PCSOs, you won't have 6 PCSOs covering Colchester, probably more like 3 or 4 at any one time, purely because of shift work, sickness, training, etc., etc. Quite right to raise the rise in burglary. And also, thanks to Councillor Barton for referencing some of the issues in Trubend. So overall, it is not a political motion. It's a motion to highlight what is hitting our communities. So I really hope each and every one of you, apart from Councillor Jowers, will support this.
Thank you very much. I now put the vote to the Council. All those in favour of the motion? Those against? The motion is carried 27 for, 15 against. Thank you very much. We then move on to item 8.5, and we have a public speaker. So would Ms. Vasquez-Walters please come and speak? I think you know the rules. It's 3 minutes to speak and a bell will go after 2.
Madam Mayor, councillors, thank you for your time. I'm here to speak in support of the motion that is about to be moved by Councillor Pearson. And I'd want to start by saying to my colleagues on the right, and I mean on the right, that it's important that we discuss national issues at local levels, because otherwise how else do politicians at all levels get to understand the impact on local communities of these policies? In fact, recent parliamentary debate on trade unions has shown a fundamental misunderstanding on the part of a number of politicians about the role of trade unions in the workplace. So why would we presume that politicians in this arena would know any different unless you have direct contact with them? I'm here to remind people that trade unions are made up of ordinary working people whose services we all rely on. And I'm talking about council workers, nurses, teachers, PCSOs, social workers, the list goes on and on. These are people who aren't brilliantly paid, who don't do the glamorous jobs, but who do benefit and rely on the support and protections that trade unions bring them. In my own workplace, trade unions play a vital role in maintaining a healthy and harmonious workplace. Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, I'm somewhat distracted by colleagues in front of me.
Carry on, please.
We're involved in health and safety assessments, in developing policy, in consulting on proposed changes that employers might want to impose. We help negotiate. We represent people in grievances, in ill health, in capability meetings. We are the collective voice of the employee, and those are things that assist the employer. My own union has run workplace training. Councillor over there mentioned workplace stress, which is a huge issue. We run workplace training and support around that issue. We offer opportunities in learning and development for all our members. Any decent employer is not scared of a trade union and would certainly suffer a detriment if the bill goes through, and there would be a huge local impact. I would ask that this council considers its position and votes based on fact. And that fact is that the council is telling you that this is a relationship that assists their members and the employer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm advised that I first of all move that Council Procedure Rule 11.2 be suspended for this item in order for the motion on the trade union bill to be debated at this meeting, and just point out to members around the room that there is very much a Colchester flavour to this motion.
Thank you very much. That it has been put to you that we suspend standing orders. All those in favour? That's carried. Councillor Pearson, would you like to present your motion, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the motion on the Trade Union Bill, details of which are at pages 4 to 5 of supplementary information for this meeting, be approved in order to inform Cabinet of Council's view. As I've already stated, the motion makes reference in several points to the effect of the proposed legislation, not only nationally on trade unions, but also locally on this council's relationship with its employees. I just want to point out that that great, I don't think he was a socialist politician, but I think historically he goes down as a great Prime Minister for many reasons. Benjamin Disraeli. Much to the chagrin of some in his party at the time, in the 19th century, he actually supported the passing of 2 acts. One that gave equal rights of redress to employees as well as employers, and the second actually legalised for the first time in Britain trade unions and the right to picket. Benjamin Disraeli, not from my party, not necessarily someone I would have voted for as leader of my party either. But certainly a leader of the, I think they're rebadged the Party of Working People these days. The elements of the trade union bill as currently published really are draconian, take us back to a time, the time of Disraeli, and in fact mirror in some respects some of the worst excesses of right-wing and even left-wing governments around the world over the last couple of centuries. The proposals are that 50% of those who participate in a ballot for industrial action need to have voted, sorry, those who are eligible to participate in the election need to have voted. Interestingly, if you look at the last general election, then the current central government would have passed that test. The next test will be 40% of the electorate in an industrial dispute have to actually support that dispute for industrial action to go ahead. Now, when I look at the figures for the May election 2015, interestingly enough, central government doesn't pass that test. Your party failed that test. So we're talking about having different rules for industrial relations to the rules that we have for the democratic election of local and central government in the land. I just want to point out that fewer working days are lost through industrial action now than have been lost probably since the Second World War. Yet for some reason there's this intention to bring in this legislation now. It makes absolutely no sense. It's an attack on accepted industrial relation practices that work effectively across the land, in private and public sector, and certainly with the people we employ here at Colchester Borough Council. Why? That's the only question I ask. Why? Please support the motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tim Young.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise in support of Councillor Pearson's motion. You probably wouldn't expect everything else. I'm proud to be the leader of the Labour group on this council, and I am proud to be a member of the Labour Party that was founded by the trade unions because it needed a voice in politics and in Parliament for working people, and that's what the Labour Party has provided since its foundation by the unions. It might surprise all of you to know that I got an A grade at O-level in history. And the main reason, I mean, I love the Russian Revolution and the French Revolution and a lot of British social history, but the British social history that really inspired me was the stories of the Tolpuddle Martyrs, Annie Besant and the Match Girls, the Taff Vale Railway, the General Strike, the Jarrow March, moving right up to the 80s and the miners' strike, the things that inspired working people to go out and fight. And that was led by the trade unions. And that's why I can't understand the attacks on working people and trade unions by this government and by previous Conservative governments. The trade unions that Margaret Thatcher called the enemy within. The enemy within. Working people. And Councillor Willits, I don't know if you heard that, he said yes. He said that's what he believes. They are the enemy within. So the unison members of Colchester Borough Council are the enemy within, according to Councillor Willits and Margaret Thatcher. The people working in our hospitals, the people working in our schools, the people working in our offices and our factories are all, many of whom are union members, are not the enemy within. They are the people who keep this country going. And to treat them in the way that the government wants to treat them is disgraceful. As Councillor Pearson quite rightly said, we shouldn't expect or insist that trade unions have more onerous strictures and rules on their democracy than we do on our democracy. Very few of us in this chamber would meet the criteria that the government are laying down for trade unions. None of us would have been elected under those rules, very few. Councillor Chapman, who's left, probably would have done because he's got 1 million votes in his ward. But there's very few others of us who would. So why would we want to support something that we wouldn't accept on ourselves, and we don't accept on ourselves? And the council, because this does refer to the council a number of times throughout Councillor Pearson's motion, would much rather, as a management group, engage with the trade unions as the voice of the working staff, because that's order. That's how they get negotiation. That's how they get things through. That's how they negotiate on salary terms and conditions. And removing what we know as check-off, where the union subscription comes straight out of pay, that is just vindictive. What other reason is there? That's been going on for many, many years in workplaces across the country. And I know there are, again, councillors on the Conservative side who believe strongly in trade unions, who believe trade unions are a force for good in this country. And I would ask them to look at their consciences, look into their souls, look into their family history, and vote the right way on this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh dear, so much emotion, isn't there, talking about unions. This side of the chamber supports the government's trade union bill and not this motion. As part of the council, we do value the employees and their employment rights, of course we do. However, we believe that motions to strike should be carried out by a majority of union members. Ideally, these should be secret. We also believe that it should not take an inordinate amount of time out of the working day to discuss union business. We think there should be curbs on trade unions such that they better represent their members. May I remind the movers of this motion that under the laws which actually rule and determine us, these beliefs were approved by the majority at a national election in 2015. Now,
As a retired school teacher and union member, I'm afraid I wasn't an enemy. I'm afraid I wasn't. I actually carried the banner in the national union march and teacher striking. But I actually left my union 4 years after having been a member. And do you know why I left it? No.
Excuse me, please. Can we have some respect? Thank you.
Because of the undemocratic conditions which can still be found in current union rules. We are against this motion and hope that the trade union bill brings workers greater democracy. And I find it fascinating that the arguments that we've been hearing have been from the union side and not actually from the workers' side. Either the workers that we hear about on the news who are not able to get on the train. What about you? What about you, the actual worker, who don't agree with the motions that are being put forward by your union and whose vote is just taken as a nothing because the votes are done in open forum and bullying is at play? We are actually for the democratic rights of the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Councillor Harrington. Just a reminder, please, that we have respect for each other and allow each other to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'd like to reassure Councillor Young I am going to vote the right way on this motion. I hope you do too. I'd like to agree with everything that Councillor Pearson says in his first paragraph. And with the Madam Speaker, the Lady Speaker, I would agree that trade unions have a very important role. Where I part company with Councillor Pearson begins in paragraph 2 of his motion, the concern about the trade union bill, because I think the trade union bill is a very good bill ensuring democracy within the trade unions. There needs to be a safeguard, because if there isn't, then too much power can get into too few hands. And if we need to be reminded of that, then we can recall the rubbish and rats that were on our streets and the piles of bodies that couldn't be cremated when this was not the case before. So I think this is I do support the trade union bill, and I have to say I will vote against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Locker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and also thank you to Councillor Pearson for bringing up Benjamin Disraeli, who's actually one of my great heroes. I strongly recommend Lord Blake's biography of him. Many years ago, I trained to be a teacher. I was a member of the National Association of Schoolmasters and Union of Women Teachers, which in those days was to me quite a sane union, unlike the NUT, who used to refuse to attend morning briefings because they thought it was unnecessary admin time. That was more important to them than actually finding out what had been happening to their children the day before. Now, I think the real key to this particular motion is in paragraphs 3 to 4. Paragraph 3 says, it's clear, this council is clear that facility time negotiated and agreed by us and our trade unions to suit our own specific needs has a valuable role to play in the creation of good quality and responsive local services. Facility time should not be determined or controlled by central government in the era of localism. I've got quite a lot of sympathy for that. However, in the next paragraph, it goes, Colchester Borough Council is happy with the arrangements we currently have in place for deducting trade union membership subscriptions through our payroll. So, on the one hand, it doesn't want the centralisation of government, but when it comes to paying out union subscriptions, it wants the centralisation of the council. It appears to me really that this motion is about the Labour Party making sure it gets the union donations which end up in its own coffers.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. Well, if it was about stopping union money going to the Labour Party, you know what? I'm not very much in favour of money going to the Labour Party, so I don't think I'd want to support it. But actually, I think what it's about is about people having choices and having someone to stand up for them. And I'm going to tell you now the story of my father. He was a member of a trade union. He worked for the Royal London. He worked for them for 43 years, 4 years, including his wartime service. But then they downsized. He was going to be made redundant. And he was offered a very low payoff, less than what he was entitled to. And the people who stood up for him were his union. And the person most of all who stood up for him was Councillor Bourne's husband as his union representative. And I have to tell you, this is not someone who would know the words to the red flag. My father would not know those words at all. But he had a union that would stand up for him in his time of need. And that's what unions are about. It's not about bullying and intimidation. I've been a member of a union when I worked in the bank. I don't recall great amounts of bullying or intimidation there. I remember the odd silly leaflet coming round urging me to vote for the Labour Party. That was recycled very quickly. And I had the option. If I wanted to pay the political levy, I could. I made damn sure I didn't, because I don't believe in giving money to the Labour Party. Oh, sorry, I've said that bit already, haven't I? I'm repeating myself. Now, what I'm saddened by is the old attitudes that we're seeing from the Conservative Party here, that they're anti-unions because they believe that the unions are for working people, and they are not. They are the party of privilege. They are the party... We've seen this all the way through tonight's agenda. We've seen they're the party that believes in owning your own home. Of course, you've got to be rich to do that. It doesn't believe in social housing. That's what the party there believes in. We've seen it on electoral registration. We've seen it right the way through this Conservative group. And now they claim...
to speak on the motion, please.
I do apologise. And now they return to the subject of the majority that was raised over there. I'm sorry, 38% of the vote is not a majority. It may get you the majority of seats in the Houses of Parliament under the unfair voting system, in the same way as the SNP got all bar 3 of the seats in Scotland on just over 50% of the vote, and 50% is a majority. No, councillors, this motion is about supporting working people and giving them choices, and that is why the Conservatives do not like it.
Right, councillors, I've got 4 more speakers on this one. No, just 5 now. Corey's next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too am a proud member of a trade union, and I am a worker, and I want to speak partly as a worker and then as the resources portfolio holder representing workers here. I must admit I am a proud trade union member, but I do admit that the Bob Crows of this world, past now, do agitate people. There is a lot of rubbish that goes on at times that does give opposition towards trade unions. So I do agree that. But this bill coming through Parliament is absolute rubbish as well. I am a history teacher and I teach, and I've only just finished my scheme of work on the Industrial Revolution. Now, the conditions that people had to work in are the reason we have trade unions today, the reason the Labour Party was created. And I too don't support funding for the Labour Party, but I do support funding towards unions. Now, as the portfolio holder for resources, I deal with the staff and the staff pay award. Now, we have got a good deal for the council, for residents and for council workers on the pay award this year. We only got there because of negotiations during time with unions and with workers on council time, and I think that has to happen. And also, it's an efficient way of doing things. An efficient way of paying subscriptions through payroll is to do it centrally, I'm afraid, and we want to be as efficient as possible in this council. So I'm happy to pay my subscriptions through my work, through my payroll, because that is where I am supported at work by a trade union. So that is my contribution. I'll be supporting this motion.
Councillor Nash.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have been a trade unionist for 47 years in an excellent union, ASLEF. When I first joined, its General Secretary was a chap called Ray Buckton, and he would do anything he could for his members to improve their working life. And as for the comments made about Bob Crow, why he wasn't liked and why the people on the other side, the councillors on the other side, don't like him, was he fought for his members. He got his members rights that otherwise they wouldn't have got. I find it very hard to control myself about the nonsense that has come out on the other side. I have been working man on the railways as a driver under some terrible conditions to start with. And when I became ill in 1998 and had 2 years off work, and London Underground tried despicably to get rid of me any way they could without paying the correct rates. And the only people who supported me and got me what I deserved was ASLEF. So I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I have to say, having spent 46 years in the NHS, 43 of those gainfully employed on the books, I do not recognise this scenario painted by Councillor Hardy. I really do not. In my 43 years as a member of Unite, starting out as ETU, then EEPTU, ending up as Unite, I, and along with colleagues, doctors, nurses, clinicians, porters, joined what was known as the Joint Staff Consultative Committee. And together we resolved problems that were appertaining to each area within the NHS. I just cannot understand what the objections are on that side to operating in that manner, where people from the BMA, nursing unions, the whole, all on check off on the NHS pay and salary scheme. What is wrong with that to encourage people to become a member of their professional body or their trade union? Whatever role they're playing within the NHS, it's going to be a very important role, whether they're a brain surgeon or a hospital porter. They have a role that they are playing, and they are the people that are making our NHS work day after day after day. Problems that come up were resolved. We had serious issues. I only went on strike once in 46 years within the NHS, and that was only for 2 hours, but it made a point. So how can that be a bad thing that you're a member of a trade union or a professional body that is encouraged by your employer? And the NHS did encourage people to join professional bodies so that they could negotiate together and solve problems, iron out problems. But to deny people to go on check-off so that you can't become a trade unionist unless you make your own financial arrangements, that is, as Councillor Young said, just purely vindictive. It's there purely and simply to say, we're in charge, this is what we want, and this is what you're going to get. It is a vindictive policy. I will be supporting this motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jowers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think sort of we're missing the point in a sense, in that I don't think anyone disagrees with the fact that unions are essential. There's no argument about that. And I rather liked Councillor Corey's issue on it. I think I might have been in the dim, distant past of the previous century for about a year a member of the Association of Lecturers or something weird like that. And there were so few of us, it wouldn't have mattered if we'd gone on strike anyway. But when I hear things on ballots, and I think, Tim, you brought up the issue of the miners' strike, it was done without a ballot. Sorry, And that was the major issue. Had there been a ballot, I don't think that that particular historic incident, Don Quinn used to carry an Orgreave key with him in this chamber. And I also think that when you have the RMT using a vote taken 4 years ago by a minority for continued action, doesn't sit well with the public. It's seen as Spanish practices. It's seen as manipulating what is wholly and honestly a good system. That's what it should be. But the reason I wouldn't have spoken on this tonight, but the reason I have is that your wife, Tim, would understand this, is that I'm a member of the Fire Authority. What was it described as? Toxic. 2 members killed themselves, suicides. The strikes were just unbelievable. Now, I think that part of that issue is that the good unions, the majority, and we deal with, I think, Unison at County Hall, and we have a fabulous relationship with them, it's not a problem. But you get to a stage where you have to balance out, and I'm going to borrow a phrase that Councillor Bentley said to me, he says, it's kind of back to the future. We have to move ahead. And I don't think, you know, Disraeli and Keir Hardie and the suffragettes and God. I think we need to look at how we operate in a modern day workforce where often there is a minority of trade union members within a workforce. Certainly at County Hall it is. And we have to support that. But it has to be a two-way thing. It cannot be used as a political manipulation point without the consent of the members. And I don't really think that check-off is as bad as it's being pointed out tonight, because it's actually the will of the member. It's not going to be forced on them, as much union action is as it stands at the moment. So I do think it needs reviewing. I think the trade union bill will be debated through Parliament, through the Lords, and if there are any absolutely glaring anomalies, they'll be ironed out. But I'm not going to oppose it, because in many ways, I think that's what the people of this country want. They do not want to see a small coterie of well-funded radicals. You need radicals, but not in that sense, manipulating society. So I'm not going to vote for this motion.
Councillor Jackie McLean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I object to being called the rich and all the rest of it over this side. I went for a job 35 years ago at a factory locally and got the job on the condition that I signed the union and paid £1.50 a week. Well, when I was in my 18, that was a lot of money. And I said, no, I wouldn't do it. They said, you didn't get the job. I said, I'll turn the job down then. I mean, I object to being dictated to. It's a freedom, you know, for each individual to choose what they want.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It occurs to me I may have to declare an interest as a member of the Law Society, as they, when I first qualified as a solicitor, were simultaneously my trade union and my regulatory body, which was a very interesting, conflicting situation, which has now been resolved. But I still don't know precisely what they do for me in the trade union sense. I don't pay fees other than a practicing certificate, but there we are. I support the motion. I support trade unions. This trade union bill seeks to damage unions and weaken them. And that is the sole purpose of it, despite the stated aim. It will make employees vulnerable to employers who aren't necessarily dishonest or unpleasant, but some of them may be facing financial pressures and have no opportunity, another option rather, but to act perhaps not in the best of ways and the ways that perhaps they would have intended. We also need to remember that at this time we have claims going through the Employment Tribunal, absolutely record low levels. They've dropped by 80% in 12 months because of the significant increase in fees, which means that ordinary working people can't afford the fees. It's not because the claims are down, because there are fewer fraudulent claims, it's because they can't afford to make a claim. Workers are unable to afford these legal fees, they're unable to afford legal redress without unions. It's an incredibly important part of what we have in this country. This policy and this bill is another attack on workers' rights from a party who ludicrously claim to be the new Workers' Party. I'll be supporting this bill. Sorry, this motion.
And finally, Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was fortunate enough to run a small manufacturing unit here in Colchester. We brought it to Colchester as a bankrupt company, and we turned it into a very successful company. I could not have done that without the support of the unions. The unions backed me all the way. The boys' heads worked and the girls worked their socks off, is the best way of putting it. And there weren't too many arguments. There were one or two bullying things among shop stewards. If you get the wrong shop steward, that's when you can get problems. Generally, the people supported me, and it was a pleasure to run it. And as for this payment of the union check-off, as you call it, I'm not familiar with the term. We all pay it now. You pay for parking in the Colchester Borough Council when it comes direct from your pay. It's much the same as a union fee.
Councillor Pearson, to sum up, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a historian by degree, but I don't live in the past. I don't attempt to live in the past. Councillor Harrington evoked those dark, dingy days from the 70s and made an emotional comment about bodies in the street. I don't recall any of that. I don't think if you look objectively at the history of that time, there were any bodies left out in the streets. There might have been a few bags of rubbish. There certainly weren't any bodies. Councillor Hardy complained that it was emotional and then went on to be emotive. And Councillor Smith's already remonstrated with Councillor Hardy about her numbers. 36%, Paul, not 38, was the electoral proportion that the Conservative government got, but nowhere near a majority, yet we have a majority Conservative government. So those figures don't add up, Councillor Hardy. And I also just want to make it clear to you that ballots for industrial action are covered by numerous pieces of legislation that have been introduced over the last quarter of a century and longer, following the miners' strike, I add to Councillor Jowers. So every single ballot, every single decision for industrial action is taken by a secret ballot. And those ballots are not counted by union members, union officials sitting in a dark room somewhere. In the case of my union, they're actually counted by the Electoral College. They're done by the Electoral Reform Society. Right, so they're done by an independent adjudicator. Check-off has absolutely nothing to do with party political funding, Councillor Locker. Check-off is for members and individual employees of any organisation. It's a deduction from salary that's taken out by the employer on the say-so of the employee. There are no closed shops anymore. So everybody who joins a trade union voluntarily. Nobody's taking money that they don't want to pay. It's just a straightforward way for members to pay their subs to their trade union. And nobody is suggesting that employees who want to give to a charity via payroll gifting should have to stop doing so. Why paying their subs, their trade union subs, should we stop it? Councillor Corey mentioned that trade unions are an efficient way to negotiate with the workforce. They certainly are. And private organisations understand that, recognise that. So do public authorities. Trade union leaders are elected to support their members and do their absolute utmost to improve terms and conditions and pay. And that's what most of them do and do very well. But they're elected, and they have to be re-elected and re-elected. Again, they're not suddenly employed in a dark, dingy room somewhere over beer and sandwiches, as some might portray the past to be. I agree with Councillor Jowers about the miners' strike in terms of balloting. I think that Arthur Scargill made a big mistake. I think he was right, and he's been proved right about what happened to mines. I always pride myself on being a son of miners. My family were generations of miners, and I always say that my generation of the family were the first generation of the family not to go down the pit, and the last generation of the family to have the opportunity to go down the pit, because they did disappear very quickly. Councillor Graham mentioned the reduction in the number of employment tribunals that have been brought over the last 12 months since the introduction of the fees for doing so. Very, very few employment tribunals were brought because the employee was being vindictive. In my particular trade union, we have to jump through a lot of hoops before the union ever would support an employment tribunal application. So there had to be a very good case. And I want to just close by saying that I belong to a union that's 103 years old. In those 103 years, we've taken 4 days of industrial action. That's not a significant amount. That's not a significant disruption to what our employer does.
Thank you very much. I now put the motion to the Council. All those in favour of the motion? Okay, those against? The motion is carried, 27 for, 18 against. Now, members, we are due to take a break, but what I'm suggesting we do is we take the next motion. Following that motion, we will then review whether we carry on with the agenda tonight or whether we carry it forward to the 3rd of November after the special meeting, bearing in mind that we still have to allow at least 20 minutes per motion for the speakers, and there's 60 minutes worth of questions to come. So we'll review it after this next motion, and I suggest we carry on without a break.
I think we should.
Well, there's some people already leaving.
Madam Mayor, I think it's ridiculous to continue at this sort of hour. There's about 2 hours of business remaining, and we just cannot get through it. The last debate was flagging, quite obviously. Members are losing their concentration. And I think the sensible thing to do is to say that we cannot go on doing business after 10 o'clock at night. I mean, it just is a ridiculous notion that we can take good quality decisions. And I propose that we now adjourn to a later date.
Councillor, it's the only issue I have for that is that for this next motion, we do have a member of the public who is sat waiting here to speak. So I think it is only fair that we take that motion with the member of the public allowed to speak, and then we stop after that motion. I'm going to put it to you that we carry on with the next motion and then we review the situation then. Thank you. So could I ask Mr. Levy, please, to come and speak?
With your permission, Councillor Blundell will go. I mean, she has a medical condition, and many of us just cannot continue in this way at this time of night, Madam Chairman. And you must use your, Madam Mayor, rather, you must use your sensible judgment and say that at 10 o'clock, we've done enough for one day, and that's it.
I understand that, Councillor Willits, but sometimes when we have done planning committee meetings, we have gone on beyond 10 o'clock. And my suggestion is it's not fair on the it's not fair on the member of public who's also waited this time to not have his chance to speak. So I'm suggesting that we take the next motion only and then we will adjourn the meeting. But at the moment, I am suggesting that we carry on with this motion. So, Mr Levy, would you like to come and speak, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm here with my Corba hat on. That's the Colchester Retail Business Association. And I speak as most members of the public would support the campaign objective to clean up the air in the town. However, the congestion charge, or as it says in the motion in council speak, road pricing system, won't work. It really won't work. It will send cars onto the already congested perimeter roads, as did the car ban 2 years ago, with devastating the town centre economy. Now, Corba came up with a Corba came up with a suggestion to achieve considerable reductions in traffic in the high street at extremely low, very little, almost pocket money costs. At a transport convention by the County Council just over a year ago, I put that suggestion to Rodney Bass. His reaction was, well reported in the paper, brilliant. I fully support that. It's a good idea. I'm sure it will work, and I will implement that or arrange for that to be implemented immediately. Here we are 12 months later, nothing. Now, I would invite Councillors Jowers and Kevin Bentley, there he is, to help Corba convey this suggestion to Rodney Bass's successor. Let's have this suggestion trialled. When it proves the point that it does work, it may be found it's not necessary to have this draconian measure which will, as I say, devastate the businesses in the town centre. So could I please suggest, Madam Mayor, if it's within the ability of this council or the mover of the motion, to withdraw temporarily the motion so that this suggestion can be trialled and then review the proposal, and if necessary either bring it back or work around the suggestion to see if that really does achieve that cleaner air objective. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I invite Councillor Hayes to put her motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that Council Procedure Rule 11.2 be suspended for this item in order for the motion on cleaning up Colchester's air to be debated at this meeting.
Council, I have to put it to you that we suspend the council rule for the debate. Those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the motion on cleaning up Colchester's air, the details of which are at pages 5 to 6 of the supplementary information for this meeting, be approved in order to inform Cabinet of Council's view. Those many of us who worry about the town centre and how it can be helped to thrive, perhaps may like to consider it will be more likely to thrive if it has clean and wholesome air, less dust, less fumes and less grime. Colchester has 59 automated atmospheric monitoring tubes scattered around mainly the town centre and surrounding roads. The information that they generate is managed by the Specialist Science Department at King's College, University of London. These tubes monitor the nitrogen oxides in our air and are an indicator for the other pollutants which are almost entirely from vehicle exhausts. And they show that the air quality is unhealthy, as simple as that. We should not only worry about Colchester Town Centre thriving as a trading place, but about the life expectancy and health of the residents of our borough. On the website of Colchester Borough Council, there is a map that shows there are 4 air quality management areas. They are, number 1 is Central Colchester, the main corridor streets, St Botolph's, Magdalen Street, Brook Street, and the starting parts of Mersey Road and Military Road, and they are mainly in my ward, Castle Ward, but also in Newtown Ward. The second one is in East Street and Lower Ipswich Road, which again is in Castle Ward. The third is at Harwich Road and St Andrews Avenue Junction, which I think is between St Anne's and St Andrews wards, and the fourth is Lucy Lane Stanway. This means in plain English that the residents in those areas are having their health damaged and their life expectancy reduced by polluted air. The right to breathe clean air is enshrined in law and has been since the 1990s. In April this year, the government of this country got a shock when the campaigning law firm Client Earth won a ruling from our own Supreme Court that the government must not just have a plan, but actually achieve cleaner air for its citizens. And that includes Colchester too. The government has not been challenging the dodgy emissions test results achieved by Volkswagen and other vehicle manufacturers, and the defeat devices used in those engines have been illegal since 2007, but nothing was done by national governments. And testing is a national government's responsibility. As a result of this illegal activity by manufacturers, it was noticed by campaigning people and by scientists that unexpectedly the air pollution in our country was failing to improve. In fact, it was worsening. And now people are suddenly faced with the realization that vehicles are more polluting than was thought when they bought them. They are actually causing their fellow citizens to have ill health and shortened life expectancy. The government has rushed out proposals in the last few months that are not even based on the latest information from this council's monitoring. When I was standing for election in 2012, a resident of Brook Street telephoned me at home and said that she was in her 80s and her health had been ruined by the poor air quality in Brook Street. She was too poor to move. She said it's too late for her, but she hoped that I could do something to help the younger ones. And I hope that this motion will do that. What it does is, in addition to condemning the government for lack of action and congratulating the campaigners who got that landmark judgment in April, and condemning the government department for publishing its hastily cobbled together plan for Colchester without even using Colchester's up-to-date data. It goes on to say that we need to get Essex County Council to work with us to discourage heavily polluting vehicles from using our most polluted streets. The vehicles concerned include cars, vans, trucks, buses and coaches which have higher than acceptable pollution emissions from their engines. At present, only one bus company that serves Colchester Town Centre is being responsive to the council's efforts to get newer and cleaner vehicles. Low emission zones would encourage all bus companies to clean up their act and to use low emission vehicles in our polluted streets. Blue badge holders and those with a need for local access could be exempt, but the best way to ensure that transport is not polluting is, of course, to acquire a low-emission vehicle oneself. And that is why the motion also declares support for more electric vehicle charging points in the borough of Colchester, because we need a network of them, just as at the moment we have a network of gas stations where you can refuel. these are necessary infrastructure to encourage people to buy low-emission vehicles in the future. And I so move.
Thank you very much. Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sympathetic to this because there are obvious concerns about air quality in Colchester. And yes, having electric charging points in the very long run is an admirable aim. And who wouldn't want to have al fresco dining on the high street without the roar of engines and the pollutant vehicles there when you're trying to have a nice glass of wine on a sunny afternoon? Also, I don't want to see Priory Street becoming Overbrook Street, which is something that's another matter that we could talk about. However, this isn't just a town centre issue, it's a borough-wide issue. I don't think that I can support this motion because a congestion charge does not send the message out that we need to send out, which is come to Colchester. We want our town centre to be vibrant. We want our businesses to thrive. We want people to enjoy our urban centre in the face of free parking, out-of-town retail and the future opportunity that's there for that. And also, I really fear about the rural bus service, because if we put a congestion charge in place, what's going to happen to those bus fees? They're going to go up. So I'm afraid, Councillor Hayes, I think you need to go back to the drawing board.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davis.
Thank you very much. I would like to reassure Councillor Hayes that we actually have the issue of air quality coming to the scrutiny panel in this financial year. And I certainly cannot say anything on this motion until I've looked at all the evidence that is here. It's a long motion, there's a lot of paragraphs there, and we really need the time to look at it, to look at all the in-depth information that's there, and to look at the evidence that lies behind it. And I will be very grateful to see that on the at the scrutiny panel when we see it. I would also like to invite Mr. Levy to come along and take part in that discussion as well. And I would echo what he says. I think maybe this motion should actually be withdrawn until we have had a chance to actually look at the subject properly, have it go through scrutiny, and so we can actually take a proper view on it. Thank you.
Councillor Lissimore.
Thank you. I did just want to say a few words because I'm so, such a late time of night. And yet we're actually talking here about charging people for coming into our town centre. With all the talk that we've had about Staines Park, with all the talk that we've had about making our town centre vibrant, yes, we have to deal with the pollution, and that's going to scrutiny committee. But this is ridiculous. And I would implore all of you to think, when you're voting for this, that you're voting for charging people to come to our town centre. Please think about that and the knock-on effect that that will have.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I think you've got to look, Councillor Lismore, at the full motion there, that it suggests as one of the means that might be used, and it's been used in other towns. But what would be far better is that actually you get the pollution sorted out. And we have talked for years about doing things about dealing with the air traffic issues in Colchester. And we've talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. And it is time for us to think about what we're doing with it. And I would urge you to look upon these as suggestions which the scrutiny panel can look at, along with Mr. Levy's suggestions as to what we've got there. And you can make recommendations then to this council as to what to do. But to sit back and do nothing like we have done for years is just not good enough. The air in Colchester has to be improved, and we have to do something about that.
Councillor Jowers.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a bit of the old shotgun effect, isn't it? It's like trying to hit an owl in a darkened room. It condemns this and it damns that, and it sort of condemns, congratulates some strange bunch of lawyers, condemns DEFRA, concern about DEFRA, fears. I'm really minded to support this, because I reckon this would be the biggest vote winner that we would have. I really do. Because in America they say, prize it from my cold dead hand. That applies to cars and vehicles here. Quite apart from the fact that, much as I'd love to see them go, there might be 2 buses left in Colchester. you know, this is kind of hysterical in a way. There is no firm motion on this. I think that what Councillor Davis has said is bring the evidence. We know that Brook Street has been bad. Why are we still using it? We know that St Botolph's is bad for years. We could bring up the issue whether we should shut the high street. That'd solve the problem in the town centre, wouldn't it? There are things that we can do, but a mishmash motion like this, really, really, at this time of night, is just ridiculous. And I'm not going to vote for it. I have nothing to do with it at all.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Lots of comments about this time of night, but we only started 4 hours ago, so we've only been going for 4 hours. I'd just like to challenge the premise that preventing vehicles coming into the town centre, and this, sorry, Mr Levy, goes to what you said earlier, is automatically detrimental to the town centre. Thank you very much for staying so late, and I do appreciate that. And I do welcome to come and see me as the portfolio holder for street services. We can have a chat about discussing with Essex and talk to the Essex County Council as well. More than welcome to have a chat with me about it, and we can work out what's better. But the premise that it's automatically detrimental to the town centre to prevent motorised vehicles into the town centre, I just challenge. People are saying it's ludicrous that we should try to reduce the amount of polluting vehicles into the town centre. It's ludicrous that a congestion charge should even be contemplated. Now, I'm not saying that I'm for the congestion charge, but there's plenty of places that have done it. Durham do it. London obviously do it. There's lots of other places do it, and it's not detrimental to the town centre. So let's not just say it's ludicrous because you don't like it or can't quite articulate why you don't like it. Let's have a proper explanation about it, please. Thank you.
Councillor Bentley.
Madam Mayor, I was seriously worried about being outdone by Councillor Jowers tonight, so I thought I should stand up again. However, it's a bit like the curate's egg, this motion. I'm pleased the Gazette is also here as well tonight, because I fear headlines, you're going to be charged by councillors to come into the town centre. Whatever the rights and wrongs of that, that could be the headline, possibly if you want to write that anyway. I usually used to charge for that, won't I? What I do think, though, and it's a serious point, is have we, before we vote on this tonight, truly consulted the businesses in our borough or in our town? We talk about consultation, that's been raised many times tonight. In all the work that we do, whether you there or us elsewhere or me here as well, we consult the public and those affected. You've heard from one business organisation, a quite long established organisation, and well respected. Have we consulted properly? Councillor Graham's absolutely right. We do need to sit down and talk about this. Having electric charging points is actually not a bad idea. We ought to think about that, because that's the way the world and the industry is moving in that area. So let's have a conversation. I think just a vote through this will set their hairs running, and it sets a wrong message and precedent to the people of this borough. None of us put this in our manifesto. Therefore, to suddenly put this through sends a wrong signal to the public. We're not consulting and asking them. So there are some good parts in this, but I just think to do this tonight would be seriously damaging to our reputation as a council. It would lay us open to just bulldozing stuff through. Whether it's right or wrong, that's what you're likely to hear. And more importantly, what do the people that contribute to the economic growth of this borough actually think? I think we should ask them first and then bring this back. Scrutiny is the right way to do it. Let's have a considered debate with all sides on this, including business and the residents as well, and then let's bring it back and have a proper debate about it.
Right. Oh, Councillor Feltham.
I'm not sure what Councillor Hayes would think about this, but I would just ask her to withdraw it, because I think that otherwise we're not going to vote on it properly, and I don't see that we can come up with a plan based on her motion. So I'm not sure, I'll ask my leader what he thinks, but I would ask her to withdraw this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hayes, it's your turn to sum up.
I'm saddened that people have chosen to call it a congestion charge. It is not a congestion charge, it is a polluter pays charge. And there's been quite a lot of, I find it very offensive to have it described as hysterical. I think people have had plenty of time to read this, and I'm sorry if you're feeling too tired to actually get to the end of what is not a particularly long resolution, which I think is perfectly clear. I'm not prepared to withdraw this. I was elected in order to help my residents who are suffering ill health. The worst affected people are children, but it's cumulative over time. Now, I'm very sorry if people here are going to take this line that, oh, let's kick it into the long grass for another 2 years. The gentleman from Corber tells us that he had his brilliant idea 2 years ago. He hasn't actually said what it was. What has he done for 2 years? Nothing. What has Councillor Bass done? Now, I'd like to remind you that Phoenix, who own Williams and Griffin, were in favour of closing the High Street. Now, if they're in favour of closing the High Street, what does that say about the view that sensible traders would take about improving air quality in our town centre? And it's not just the town centre. I should remind you again that Brook Street, which is a residential street, is the worst polluted street of the lot. So with that, and as it's late, I would ask you to support this.
Just a reminder, this will stand referred to, it goes to Cabinet. It's to inform Cabinet. Just to let you know. All right, all those in favour of the motion? Those against? The motion is lost. There were 17 votes for and 21 against. Council, I'm now going to adjourn the council meeting. Just don't go quite yet. Just let me finish. It will come back to the December meeting because apparently there's too many apologies for the other meeting. So in order to have proper debates on things. But can I just remind people when we do put motions in that you are conscious that we will be here for a long time. If we put 7 motions in, we will be for a long time. And to do justice to the motions and to the people who speak on them and have prepared them and to members of the public, we ought to be prepared to stay for a long time. So good night and thank you very much, everybody.